And now that we're into insider season, weekly with Darren Dreger will typically be Mondays, but he's made some time for us here on a Tuesday. TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Nice to have you back. How are you?
I'm doing okay, busy. It's kind of that time of year too. And then, even though historically we look at U.S. Thanksgiving, which is later this week, and just around the 20-game mark as the annual mark for the trading season open, I think the activity is elevated, but I don't get the sense that there's anything, front burner. And maybe that pushes to the 25, 30-game mark, because when you look around the National Hockey League, with the exception of 2-3 teams, maybe everybody's still kind of in it, right? And the divisions are so tight. So that helps explain why there are so few sellers.
Points proximity, you're right. But the headlines are delicious for a guy like you these days. The Leafs are in last place in the Eastern Conference. The Canucks are nearly last place in the Western Conference. And the Oilers are below the playoff bar. That tells me that we're going to see a lot of Darren Dreger in the next few weeks.
Yeah, probably. No, undoubtedly, yes. But I mean, these clubs are more or less in the same boat, right? And I'd throw the Montreal Canadiens into the mix as well. They add Alex Texier. Okay, with all due respect, maybe he helps because he's better than a seat filler, but he's not a game changer, or I don't expect him to be. So that Quinn Hughes is one of those teams that is on the hunt. Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs are in one. Their health situation, no different than the Vancouver Canucks, is not very good. Marginally getting better with news that, they're seeing improvement in Matthews and in Nyes and in some other pieces. But their schedule is hard. It's difficult. And when you look at where the Toronto Maple Leafs are positioned, even though I think that with Marner now in Vegas, everybody believed and knew there was going to be some form of adjustment required. Nobody expected that a team that I think responded to playing the way you need to play under Craig Berube a year ago isn't responding this year. They're simply not getting it. They're not competing at the level that he needs them to compete. So when you've got Toronto in the mud, the Vancouver Canucks dealing with they're dealing with, the start of the Edmonton Oilers, I mentioned Montreal. You're right. That keeps guys like me in business.
All right. You mentioned the Canucks. What are they dealing with, Darren?
Yeah, a lot, to be fair, but I think that it's important to embrace perspective and context here. What we know is that Patrick Allvin submitted a memo into what I believe is a general manager's group chat, essentially, right, to say, hey, we are open to moving our pending unrestricted free agent veterans. He did not say we are open to moving all veterans. He did not say that we are considering trading Quinn Hughes. Very specific to that group of players. So what that means is if somebody calls on Evander Kane and says we're offering a younger player or a piece that the Canucks can work with that is futures, sure, Allvin and company would consider that. And, isn't this really the MO of Jimmy Rutherford? It feels like we talk about this on an annual basis, right? So you're past the 20-game mark. The trade deadline is still eons away, but you've got a Canucks team that is struggling and dealing with the injury adversity, but still wanting to maintain competitiveness and feeling that they're not that far away because, my eye tells me they're playing hard. Are there games that they could have won, maybe should have won? Well, yes, but then you have to look at the inexperience that they have to play on their defense. The fact that, they've got David Kampf playing number 2 center. I'm a believer in David Kampf, but they pulled him off the scrap heap in Toronto, and he couldn't get in the lineup of the Toronto Maple Leafs, but there he is in Vancouver as a 2C. So Vancouver's just trying to get a head start on the business, but they're not selling off primary assets to do it.
There was a meeting yesterday, Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin, and Adam Foote's office, Quinn Hughes in there as well. How much are you aware of whether Quinn Hughes was brought into the process here, Darren, as they hope to keep him beyond this season?
Well, undoubtedly, they want to keep him beyond this season. That's pretty obvious, right? And that's the tricky part in all of this. What I know of Quinn Hughes, and that applies to the very second of this conversation, he wants to win with the Vancouver Canucks. Captain of the team, He's looking at all of the holes that we've already talked about, the holes that they have up the middle, the inexperience on their blue line, the fact that Thatcher Demko is hurt. He's keenly aware of the issues that this club faces. So, he's probably looking at management, maybe to the coach, and saying, okay, well, we're plugging holes with these guys who, don't have a resume of playing long-term in the National Hockey League. What else? What else are we trying to do here? And then again, I back up and we talk about the memo that was sent out to the 31 other clubs. So management is trying to encourage some dialogue with other clubs to get that help that Quinn Hughes and the coach and others are hoping that they get. But this is an important year, right? If Vancouver can't turn a hardworking playing ethic into wins, and if you get closer to the trade deadline and they're a non-playoff team and the season looks like it's going sideways, you're probably looking at things a little bit different because if you're Quinn Hughes and you're a non-playoff team, well, maybe going into the offseason with a year left on your contract, all bets are off. And you're like, no, I don't see it. I don't think that this is something that is going to work. And I think that it's in your best interest to consider trading me at this point. But they're not there yet. And the captain certainly hasn't given up on this season.
Well, let me ask you this. They were hesitant to bring Hughes into the conversation about who the new head coach should be because they didn't necessarily want to burden him with that, although they did pick someone who we understand had Hughes' blessing in Adam Foote. It would be a hell of a gaffe to trade out a veteran that Quinn Hughes looks at as part of the solution here in Vancouver. So do you know whether Quinn will be consulted at all in terms of who needs to go from this Canucks team?
I don't know that. I really don't. I think that there's a high level of respect for what Quinn Hughes sees in every sense of the organization. So I would look at Quinn Hughes no differently than I look at Connor McDavid, maybe Austin Matthews. I mean, any decorated player on any team, especially in the Canadian market where there's strong opinion coming from every corner. I don't know why you wouldn't have at least a general conversation on what he sees as primary needs. I mean, anybody can look at that roster and see they need a center.
Yeah.
Anybody. And I mean, it goes without saying that when Patrick Allvin picks up the phone and he's talking to these general managers, he's identified one of their centers in their organization as a player of interest to the Vancouver Canucks. But again, I think we need to be mindful and keep it in context. The veteran players that Vancouver is willing to part with right now are unrestricted free agents at the end of this year. Okay, well, I don't know that you would have to consult your captain or any player, aside from the obvious wondering, if Quinn Hughes is, a real good buddy with one of the unrestricted free agents, he's the captain, all right, maybe you have that conversation. But beyond that, I'm not sure it's needed.
So right now, that limits what we're talking about to Evander Kane, Kiefer Sherwood, and potentially Teddy Blueger, although he's not fully healthy now, so I don't know that he would be top of the list. Can those conversations dovetail to others? We've heard some discussion about Connor Garland being available, and even the wisdom of, is somebody trading for Connor Garland at expense of a guy that could play center? I don't know that I even see that as a route to success.
No, I'm with you. And maybe that's why I dropped Evander Kane's name earlier with a purpose. Not that he hasn't been a good fit for the Vancouver Canucks, but, you look at the other pieces, they still have to have a negotiation with Judd Moldaver, who represents Kiefer Sherwood. Mm-hmm. What does an extension look like? What sort of dollars are we talking about here? To this point in the season, he's been an offensive producer. Is that sustainable? I don't think either side is in any rush, but if you're the Vancouver Canucks and things haven't improved and you don't like the numbers that you're hearing from Judd in the early or the preliminary discussions, why wouldn't you throw out Kiefer Sherwood into that? And I think you have, essentially, right? Because again, we're being specific here to the pending UFAs, and there's not a boatload of them. There's a few that would have interest and have some value, without question. And for me, it's probably Kane and Sherwood at this point.
So
Yeah.
the idea is trade one of the wingers for a center. It may be a lesser center than the winger is a winger, but that's the boat you're in when you're desperate down the middle and at a more premium position. Is that effectively?
Yeah, and if you want to expand the trade a little bit, the perfect scenario would be for a younger player. And you look at Sherwood, well, that's not going to be entirely easy to do. But, maybe that's where you get a little bit more creative in terms of the Canucks assets that are non-roster assets that you're willing to sweeten to make a deal like that, where you're getting the center, but all of a sudden he's a younger center than you were expecting to get as part of that package.
Yeah.
But let's attack this from the other side. Who's willing to peel off a center right now that is in acquisition of winger mode? My mind explodes just even trying to think of what team would be in that position. Who's so overflowing with centers?
I do this for a living every single day, and twice a week on TSN. I roll my eyes a little bit at the words that are coming out of my mouth when I'm talking about, this general manager has made it clear that he's identified a centerman. They're scouring. We say it 52 times a year.
Yeah.
And to your point, I'm not making fun of myself. We're reporting facts, but it's just the wheel continues to spin because they haven't been able to find that player. And then I'm reminded of the many conversations I've had with Jimmy and all the experienced general managers over the years of, if you don't get your business done in the off season, especially when you're looking for top 4D and centermen, and I guess throw goalies, of course, obviously into that mix, good luck. And then if you face the issue of injury like the Canucks have faced to this point of the year, it's just magnified. And the other part to this, and I'm not amused by the general manager's chat chain. Why wouldn't they have a group chat?
Yeah, for sure.
It's rather than making 31 calls, you just send out a note and say, hey, we're open for business on our pending unrestricted free agents. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? But as if that information is going to stay confidential for more than an hour or two. That's not real either. So we continue to spin our tires. But again, when you've got injury and you've got a need, we have to keep talking about it because the search from these guys and their office is continual day by day.
And to be fair, with these fantastical wants of some general managers, I would say more than once per season, guys, we see a trade go down where you imagine a GM is thinking, if I knew that guy was available, I would have done that trade. And so we get surprised by trades.
Okay. Yeah. You're not wrong. But so here, just let me throw something out very quickly for you guys. This is why, and that Johnny Beecher getting claimed by the Calgary Flames off waivers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was borderline shocked that he was on waivers. And you shouldn't be, I guess, when you look at the fact that he wasn't in the lineup with the Boston Bruins. But it supports the discussion we're having here. Johnny Beecher is a large centerman, young, who can flat out skate. And anybody who spent 5 minutes watching the Boston Bruins could see that this kid was starving for a restart, a fresh start somewhere else. For Boston not to be able to get something for Johnny Beecher, that blows my mind. And again, that's supported by the number of teams that reached out to me that said they had no idea that he was going on waivers. Like, again, when you're talking about a world that needs centermen, he may not have been an answer to the troubles of Vancouver in the 2-3 spot, but how do you know? Decent young center that'll get nothing but opportunity in Calgary.
All right. Well, a few things here. First of all, I think Patrick Alvin knows full well that his memo is going to get public in short order. In fact, I think that's part of the point as well, to tamp down
I'd be pissed.
the temperature.
If I were a manager, I'd be freaking sour.
If it got public, you mean?
Yeah, I would be. I mean, I get it, but
they have to know, as you say, Dregs, like they have to know that's going to get public.
I know, but what goes around comes around, right? So if the general manager putting that memo out there shares it with one of us, one of the reporters, that's his prerogative. That's his business, no problem. But when one of the other guys does it, gets a little greasy.
Yeah. You say you're not amused. Are you amused by Russians in their basement smoking cigarettes, eating cashews, and coming up with high danger chances? Dregs.
Well, I was when I saw the soundbite, only because I know Adam Foote, and he's a funny guy. He's a funny guy, and I just get the popcorn out when the analytics debate starts, especially when it's fueled on social media, and this would have fueled that. But I also appreciate his sense of humor. He was trying to be funny, trying to lighten the mood, and yeah, the analytics world didn't like it. But I guarantee you, Adam Foote would acknowledge, no different than any head coach in the National Hockey League, that every year it grows, right? The world of analytics and how the coaching staff and management use analytics and support their own analytics department is abundantly obvious. So
yeah.
I think he was trying to be funny. I was amused by it because I've engaged in this debate historically, but I guess it struck a chord. So he'll get through it. He's been through worse.
One more Canucks item here, but the team announces this morning that Kevin Lankinen is not going on this road trip because of a personal matter. They have recalled Yuri Patera, so they are running Nikita Tolopilo and Yuri Patera through California and Colorado, Darren.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that things could move quickly here from the Canucks in terms of their unwillingness to rebuild if they're staring down a near-term future with Patera and Tolopilo between the pipes?
I mean, I don't think so. I'm not firm on that, and I can understand, why people would have issue with that too. But, again, it doesn't sound like Thatcher Demko is that far away, right? And if he can stay healthy, knock on wood, then he's going to give you a chance to win. So, I mean, it's just a pile-on effect now. It's reached the point of being just bonkers in Vancouver and elsewhere. So maybe it heats up the chair of Patrick Allvin in the sense of, okay, like there's only so many bullets we can take here. Like you need to find that piece. Like you've got to find a depth defenseman that can help us through the grind. You've got to find a centerman. So maybe in that respect, all of this is coming together, but I don't think beyond that. In fact, I know based on the messaging that I got this morning, they're kind of in a wait and see mode. If we can just wrap up this whole trade thought scenario for a moment, they're putting those pending UFAs out there, but if they don't get what they need back, they're happy to wait. So that doesn't speak of an organization or a management group that is willing to turn tail and jump into one of the R words because there's another injury in the mix. It just elevates their need for support.
Is there a semantics thing that's missing here? Like, I think the Canucks management don't want to do a full tear down rebuild in the grand scheme of things. Three years of losing, et cetera, et cetera. But
right.
when you realize that injuries have basically kiboshed your season, isn't there an in-between world where you just say, no, we're going to have a rebuild year? I'm selling all my assets. I'm doing all the responsible things for this year because we can't win this year, but I'm going to set myself up for success next. Isn't there middle ground there? And it's not the half-ass rebuild that we've seen from other administrations in this team.
Yeah.
But it's just calling a spade for the year at least.
Okay, but define what that year means, because,
the UFA
when's
thing,
the last? Yeah. When's the last time we saw a trade at the trade deadline that significantly mattered? And sure, there have been recent success stories of teams that have added pieces at the deadline, a rental guy that seems to fit in all of that. But I'm talking about the return, a first-round draft pick for whatever player that Patrick Allvin is moving as part of a retool between now and the trade deadline isn't going to matter to Patrick Allvin, because chances are he's not going to be around, right, when that player becomes an NHL player. Yep. Probably not. So when I push back on what's the year, if that year drifts into the offseason and the Quinn Hughes situation goes sideways, where you're in a position where you may not be afforded the next year, because Quinn is making it abundantly clear he's not staying, and you need to transition and maximize what that return looks like. Well, now we're talking about something around the draft, right? Or around free agency. But that's not going to help the Canucks after the trade deadline.
Yeah, that's the problem.
All right, Darren, great stuff. Looking forward to going weekly here, especially with things flying around already. Appreciate the time here today. Catch up Monday.
Okay, guys. Thank you.